Everybody can see that?
Yes.
And my cursor, hopefully, because I'm going to need it. I want to thank you guys for asking me to do this. I'm actually quite honored. I'm always impressed with the quality of the speakers that you guys have, and I'm just humbled that you guys thought enough of my pictures to ask me. So I hope this is useful for you all. I thought I'd plant a little bit of my background first. I really got interested in this. Well, I should say the seed was planted way back as a freshman in college. I took intro astronomy from George Abel at UCLA, and then followed that up with an observation class afterward. I had a hard freshman year, so I needed something that was easy, and astronomy was supposed to be it. It was a little tough, but it was very enjoyable. Um, from that time, I actually took my first picture in 2009, and I did everything the wrong way. I started with a very long focal length Schmidt-Cassegrain CPC 800, very slow scope f10. It was alt-az mounted. Uh, didn't have an Astrocam, so I stuck my Minolta at the time on the back end, and wanted to see what I could get. I'm one of these people. I need to see what I can get before I take a big step. But I wanted to show that even going this hard way, you can have success. Nowadays, I'm using much better equipment. I've progressed from alt-az to a gem. I went from my Minolta to a one-shot color non-regulated cooled camera. Now I'm using a monochrome set point CMOS camera with filters. I went from manual focus to autofocus. I've added refractors and Ritchie-Chrétien scopes to the whole thing. And the other thing is, from a long time ago, I've learned that you need to use calibration frames, darks, flats, dark flats. I don't use bias though. So with that, I wanted to show you my very first image taken way back in 2009, right there. Everybody see what got me excited? This
It's the
little
ring.
ring nebula right there where my cursor is. I don't know if it shows up on Zoom or not. It's all of 4 images, 5 seconds each, taken with my CPC 800. It's a very long focal length, f10, DSLR, not cooled, backyard light pollution from San Dimas. So Bortle 8 all the way.
I see it.
You got to strain. But as soon as I saw that, I was hooked. I knew I could do this. It's just a matter of, perseverance. So a short 7 years later, no, I guess it's 8 years later, in 2017, August, I've now progressed, still the same CPC. It's now on a wedge. I've sped it up with a reducer. It's guided now. It's shot with a cooled camera, but it's not regulated. And this was what you're expecting to see. So I was happy with this. But there was still more. I knew there was more because I've seen other pictures of this, and there's some faint stuff around here, right? There's some faint stuff around the ring. So again, from the backyard, now with much better equipment, I've got this one. Same ring nebula, same backyard.
No, it's
same,
takes a
same
long
Bortle
time
8
for it to
guys.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh, some
of you are not
stuff that
muted,
these,
and you're covering up the
one of our
speaker.
members took.
Okay, I think we're good. So again, this was now July 2020. So a few years back, I'm now using my equatorial mount. I use a Paramount Mighty. This is taken with an 8-inch Ritchie-Chrétien, which I'm still struggling to learn how to collimate, but I'm getting there. It's monochrome CMOS camera. This is nearly 30 hours of luminance, hydrogen alpha, O3, and RGB data. What I like about these things is not only just this faint detail that I got here, the little galaxy in the background, but all the little faint details that you can see throughout the whole thing. You'll see in some of the other pictures, like here's a little galaxy that's popping out right there in the corner. Those are the sorts of things that I find fascinating. So I'm one of those pixel peepers. I'll just zoom in and hunt for things because that's really what I like. Now, with that all said, there was another planetary nebula out there that I was aware of that had kind of faint nebulosity around it that, you know, people that really go deep can get. And that's the Dumbbell Nebula. So, you know, this one's from the backyard again. This is taken in 2017. So it's with the CPC, the Schmidt-Cassegrain, sped up just a whole 7.5. 2 hours and 45 minutes from a one-shot camera. It's what you would kind of expect. Typical Dumbbell Nebula that you'll see. Some of the things that are obvious to me anyway. Collimation issues out here with the scope. I've gotten much better at collimating that particular scope now. But again, there's faint stuff out here that if you go deep, you can get. So again, from the backyard, a couple years later, I pulled out this. This is the same Dumbbell Nebula. This is now 22.5 hours of hydrogen alpha and O3 data. So it's an HOO image. Filters are not very good. You see lots of halos around the stars. But man, I got what I was looking for. These, I call them wings. It almost looks like a butterfly now. Instead of being the apple core, it looks more like a butterfly. So I really was enjoying this. The one thing I was disappointed about is I didn't get as much red up in this area as I could have. There's a little bit that you can see, but just not quite as much as I would have liked to. So what I'm trying to show with these 5 slides is, you know, from your own backyard, Bortle 8 skies, you can get some pretty good pictures. It takes a while, you know, 22, 30 hours. So quite a while, but you can get some nice images from home. Now, I do go to dark sites. So this is a shot that I took from the dark site that I go to. I go to a place called Oak Grove. It's just, I guess, east of Mount Palomar, just inside the San Diego County line. I go with several other old friends of mine that also image. And this is Comet Lovejoy, taken back in January 2015 when it was on the border of Aries and Taurus, right near the Pleiades. If I had waited a little longer, I might have been able to get the Pleiades in there. This is a wedge-mounted SCT, full focal length, so f10, very slow, the same non-regulated color camera. This is 32-minute stacks, a stack of 32-minute subs. What I like about this, a lot of times you'll see people will stack to keep the stars nice and tight, and the comet looks like a streak. And it's like, yeah, you know, it's moving. See how you can tell it's moving. Or they'll focus on the comet head, and the stars are streaked. And yeah, you get the motion. I kind of get the motion from seeing everything stationary and looking at this long tail that comes out the back. Just the structure in there, the faintness of the tail and how it streams out, to me, conveys motion incredibly well. So that's what I liked about this, is just this tail that's hanging out the back. A little more recently now, October 2019, this is the Sculptor Galaxy, obviously in Sculptor. This was taken from Oak Grove, October 2019. This is now with a Stellar View 90mm refractor on the Mighty mount. 7.5 hours of LRGB. Usually when I say something like that, it's probably 3 hours of RGB and 4.5 hours or more of luminance. I tend to take a lot more luminance than RGB. The challenge on this particular object is that it never really gets very high. It's always in the muck, so it's hard to get a good image of it. But still, you're able to get this faint nebulosity at the edges of the galaxy that I like, and the detail inside, and the orange colors and the blue. You know, in hindsight, I wish I'd shot a little bit of H alpha on it to pull out some of the pink that you can see or starting to come out. It would have been nicer. But obviously you can tell from the shape and the stars themselves, I needed a little more work on handling stars still. They're a little bit too sharp and too edgy for me. I'd like a little bit softer edges. Next up, this is also from the Dark Sky site. This is Abel 39 in Hercules. This was taken June 2020. This is with the 8-inch Ritchie Chrétien that I have. 8 hours of oxygen, 12 hours of RGB, so 20 hours total from a dark site to get this. It's incredibly faint, but just look at the symmetry you get out of the thing. It's just incredible. I'm amazed that something so far away and a result of a star puffing up can be so symmetric. It's phenomenal. And this is another one of those images where, you know, you've got all this stuff in the background. You've got a galaxy over here. You've got a galaxy over here. These little ones all peppered all through the whole thing. Really fun to just kind of zoom in and pixel peep and see what you can find. Lots of fun. Yes.
Ron, I got a quick question for you. What is this object?
This is a planetary nebula.
Oh, okay.
This is well, I'm going to go out on a limb because I'm not an astronomer very well, but you know, this has got to be the star that puffed it all out, the one in the middle there.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
See, what's neat about this is you can see it's very rarefied gas here because you can see stars through it. I assume that some of these stars may be behind.
Well, actually, this right here, where my cursor is, that's actually a galaxy that's behind it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of, you know, it's kind of fun to look at all these, you know, and the funny thing is when you're taking these, you know, Cheryl can probably say the same thing. I don't see a darn thing in the images as I'm acquiring them. I just have to trust that I'm pointed in the right spot, that plate solving worked, and I'm pointing right, because you can't see them. You know, the histogram is so far slammed to the left that you don't see anything there.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So
Ron, it's interesting to compare the symmetry of this to M57, which looks like it kind of got crushed on a couple of sides. And
exactly, yeah, isn't it? Or even M27, right? Because that's also planetary, and you know, it's just so different. But yeah, this one, you know, anything that's like a bubble, I find fascinating. I took one recently that I'm not going to show, but it's got a bubble in it. It's just like, it's just barely there, wispy.
Is there any way to know? Any way to know how many light years across that is?
You know, I probably have it in my write-up, but I don't know offhand. You know, you know, I take them and I file them, and then I almost forget about them. I just go back and look at them from time to time. So going on then, next one will be very familiar, but maybe not. The Crab Nebula. This is this was taken from the backyard, actually, December of 2020 through the 8-inch Ritchie Chrétien. 4.5 hours of 10-minute subs. This is a Hubble palette, but it's a little bit off of the Hubble palette. There's a process that you can use to accentuate the gold and the turquoise in the Hubble palette, and I applied that, and I got this psychedelic color. And initially, I wasn't so sure I liked it because it's just not the right color. You know, I'm used to red. But the more I look at it, it's like it's really fascinating. Just the colors and the intricacies and how everything's put together. You know, and obviously each of the colors is a different combination of elements, so you can see how things are stacked about in the nebula itself. The next one up is actually this is probably my favorite image that I've taken. This is the Cave Nebula in Cepheus, taken September 21st, again from the backyard. through the stellar view refractor, 90 millimeters. It runs at about f5.4, 5.6. This is 31 hours of SHO subs, probably 10 minutes each, and 1 hour each of RGB. Now, the RGB I used purely for the star color. If anybody's familiar with Hubble palette or SHO narrowband images, your stars tend to be magenta. So you kind of wipe all those out and you plug in RGB stars. Like Cheryl was saying, it's art, okay? This is not science, this is just art. What I like about this, there's so much to like about this. I like all the colors. It goes from deep purple to blue to turquoise, yellow, orange, red. Just the whole rainbow is in there. The magnitude of the luminance, you know, you've got blacks and you've got these whites in the stars. You've got this center object here. You've got a cloud covering a massive, probably a star cluster in there that's just highlighting it from the back. It looks like a sun as a dark cloud covers it, and you've got the silver lining on it. It's just incredible. The detail down in here, if you wanted to zoom in, is just really nice. You know, the stars are the right shape, they're the right size, they don't overwhelm the picture. The nebulosity really stands out. So I really like this one a lot. Next one is a target I've tried many times, and I was just never ever satisfied with it. I gave it another shot April of this year, so earlier this spring. Again, 8-inch RC. I like to go long. This is 4.5 hours of 3-minute subs of luminance, and 1 hour each of 5-minute subs of RGB. Yeah, I'm looking at the wrong part of my notes. So I've taken this many times, as I said, and never been happy with it. It just looks like a mess. It looks like a glob of light with a line through it, and I was never happy. This one
You muted yourself. Lower left corner.
Ron, you're not showing up as muted, so maybe you disconnected your audio somehow.
Did that work?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to where I was then.
This is the sombrero?
Yes, the sombrero. So this is the Sombrero Galaxy. This is in Virgo, taken April this year, again through the 8-inch Ritchie. One thing that's changed that I think really helped is I've added autofocusers to both of my scopes. So instead of focusing once and then running for 6 hours, I now focus automatically every hour, whether it needs it or not. And I think it's pretty clear it needed it. You start to get the detail here in the dust lane through the middle of the sombrero. And the thing that I really was surprised with is the structure that you see out here and out here at the edges.
Wow.
You don't see that in very many photos of the sombrero. So I was actually pleased with this, the way it came out. The last picture I have, this is my favorite target. Not quite my favorite picture, like I said, but my favorite target. This is the Trifid Nebula, or Trifid, in Sagittarius. This was taken in July this year from the dark side through the stellar view, 90 millimeter, again with an autofocus on it. 9 hours of luminance, 5 hours of HA, red RGB. This is my favorite target. I fell in love with this the very first time I saw it on the cover of George Abell's textbook that I used. I just couldn't believe that something was blue and pink and out in space like that. The colors on this are just phenomenal. It just pops out, even though there's a lot of stars in it, which people tend to like to tone down a little bit. I still think this nebula shines through. The interesting thing I think is that most of the time people like to make this a little more red, thinking, oh, this is mostly H alpha. It should be red, not pink. But clearly in a wide field like this, you can see this is H alpha here. This is red. So clearly to me, something else is going on here. So yeah, it's probably H alpha, but I think there's a lot of reflection going on in there as well, making it this bright pink. The other thing this picture has going for it is this nice little star cluster up here that's making a photobomb. So that was the last image that I had. I thank you guys for having me to talk. And if anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
In the moon that is behind you,
Yes,
you take that too?
I did. That's a very old photo as well. I've actually upgraded that one recently. I followed a YouTube video on how to use, I think it's auto stacker, and I was never good at that. And I followed a YouTube and it came out much, much better. So I'm going to change this one. Although it's in the background, so I don't think anybody would notice a change in the detail. But yeah, that's a picture I probably took. Again, that's one of my early photos. So probably late 2009, early 2010.
You said you live in San Dimas. Are you facing south then? Where you take these pictures?
Oh no, my south is full of pine trees. I need to get after the association to take down a few trees because I'm getting walled in. My best view is actually to the northeast.
Are you then north of Foothill?
No. I'm overlooking. I'm in the hill overlooking Cal Poly.
Oh, okay. I live in San Dimas also, so I was wondering.
Yeah, no, overlooking Cal Poly up in I can walk to Benelli Park, that sort of thing.
Okay. I know I have a south view from east to west, so it's
Well,
great for the planets and stuff.
I may come by and visit you sometime. Don't mind me if I'm there at 3 in the morning.
Ron,
Yes.
since we live in Laverne, we ought to get together for lunch or something sometime and compare notes.
Certainly, yeah. Well, I'm a novice at PixInsight as well. Most of these, up until I'd say the last maybe 2 or 3 photos here, were all done in Photoshop. And I was impressed with what people were putting out with PixInsight. I knuckled under and paid the steep price, and I'm now paying the steep learning curve price to learn it. But it's coming along. It's actually a very good processing program.
Yeah, I can tell by Cheryl's working with PixInsight, it has a extremely steep learning curve.
Yeah. A lot of swear words come out of my house when I'm using it.
While Cheryl was getting her early pictures, I was playing with my 1990 Meade 8-inch SCT trying to get pictures. And, that era scope didn't have a guiding port,
Right.
which I really wanted. I found a group online that published how to modify the hand controller to do an SD4 guiding port.
Ah, okay.
I modified it. By the time I got that done, I was having trouble pulling focus on the scope, even visually.
Yeah.
And I looked at it carefully, and the inside of the corrector plate was filthy.
Yeah.
And I'd recently had it cleaned, so I'm beginning to try to use that scope again. But in the meantime, I got an 80mm refractor.
Yes. So that's a good scope to start with. Yeah. That's a good beginning photography scope. Or even the smaller scopes like the Red Cats. Something nice and wide is really forgiving. When you start to go really long and the fields of view get tiny, oh man, every little wind gust shows up in the stars.
And they're great until you get to the season where you basically have nothing but little galaxies.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. 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 That's actually why I bought the 8-inch Ritchie Chrétien, was for galaxy season. But I find that depending on the size of the target and what I'm looking for, I'll switch between either the Stellar View or the Ritchie Chrétien. So I'm looking at, in one case with the RC, it's something like 1600 focal length. With the Stellar View, it's right around 500, the way I've got it stopped down.
Have you
Okay.
taken any pictures of planets?
Yeah, I contemplated putting one in. I am not a very good planetary imager. It's a completely different skill set, actually. Back when several years ago, when Jupiter and Saturn were at their close conjunction, I took my scopes out and took some pictures of the conjunction. I'm happy with them, but I contemplated showing one and I pulled it out. But it's a really different skill set. I even with the 8-inch Schmidt Cassegrain, you're still too short. People use 11-inch Schmidt Cassegrains and photo multipliers and things. They go up 2 to 3 times Barlow's. They're really getting a small field of view. But the difference there is that they're taking video. So they'll take, I don't know, 50 shots of 50 frames a second, 20 frames a second, something like that. And they'll take, I don't know, 10,000 of them, say, and they'll use maybe 100 to get these fabulous pictures. They use the best 100 where the seeing for that one 100th of a second was perfect, and they grab that one image out of 10,000, and that's the one where they'll stack a couple of them, and that's what they publish.
Yeah.
It's a really different skill set. I'm amazed at the people that do that and what they can get out of it. It's incredible.
Well, these were amazing. Mike and Cheryl's and yours, just those. Wow.
Thank you very much. Like I said, I'm always impressed with the quality of the presentations that you guys have. So just for you to ask me, I was happy. That made my day.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron.